Right now, you're probably warm. There's a thin layer of fabric between you and the air, a room that quietly holds its temperature around you, a coat hanging by the door that you barely think about, so ordinary it's become invisible. Now, strip all of that away. The fabric, the walls, the heating, the coat. They had none of it. Drop yourself into a European winter 25,000 years ago at the peak of the last ice age, the moment scientists call the last glacial maximum. A 2020 study led out of the University of Arizona put the global average temperature back then at roughly 46 degrees Fahrenheit, about 7.8 degrees Celsius colder than the 57 we live with today. No shops, no cotton, no fire waiting at home, just a naked-skinned primate, a body built for the heat of Africa, standing at the edge of a world turning to ice. And here's the strange part. The way those humans survived that cold isn't only a survival story. It quietly rewrote human intelligence. It reshaped how our species spread across the entire planet. And it's woven right now into the clothes on your back tonight. 3 enormous consequences. Traced back to one brutal problem. Science only pieced together how in the last handful of years. But to understand how they survived it, you first have to understand the problem. And the problem was us. Because here's the truth about your body. You are a tropical animal. Every part of you was designed for warmth. Your ancestors evolved under the African sun, and your biology still carries that fingerprint. You sweat across nearly your entire body, millions of glands built to dump heat fast. Your bare skin, the very thing that leaves you shivering in a cold room, was an advantage on the savanna, letting you run down prey in the midday heat while thicker-furred animals overheated and quit. We are apes from the equator, and during the Ice Age, the equator was gone. Look at almost every other large mammal that shared that frozen world. The woolly mammoth wore a dense double coat down to its knees. The woolly rhino, the musk ox, the cave bear. Each one was born already dressed for the cold, insulated by evolution itself. You weren't. A human infant arrived into that freezer naked, hairless, radiating heat it couldn't afford to lose. By every rule of biology, we should not have survived at all. This is the puzzle that fascinates researcher Ian Gilligan, an archaeologist whose book, Climate, Clothing, and Agriculture in Prehistory, was published by Cambridge University Press. His central argument cuts against everything you assume about why we wear clothes. Clothing, he argues, wasn't invented for modesty. It wasn't for decoration. It was born from one desperate need: raw thermal survival against a cold our bodies were never built to face. So, if evolution didn't hand us a fur coat in time, the first thing that saved us was already hiding inside our own bodies. So did our bodies help at all? Partly. And in ways you're still carrying right now. When the cold hits, your body reaches for its oldest defenses. It starts to shiver, muscles firing over and over, burning fuel purely to make heat. It pulls your blood inward, away from your skin and toward your vital organs, a process called vasoconstriction, which is why your fingers and lips go pale and numb first. Your body is quietly deciding your extremities are expendable if it means protecting your heart and brain. And then there's a hidden furnace most people don't know they own. It's called brown adipose tissue, brown fat. And unlike ordinary fat that stores energy, this kind burns it to generate heat. Cold-adapted populations likely leaned hard on metabolic tricks like this. Studies of Neanderthal physiology, including work by Steegman and colleagues in 2002, and later cold adaptation research by Donnan, point to stockier bodies and heat-conserving metabolisms in the humans who endured that world. But here's what's fascinating. You still have brown fat right now. And stepping into the cold activates it, exactly as it did for people who died 20,000 years ago. There's an even stranger leftover. Those goosebumps that rise on your arms in a cold room, they're a ghost. Tiny muscles are trying to fluff up a thick coat of fur your species lost long ago. It's a reflex firing for an animal you no longer are. Your body never got the memo that the Ice Age ended. And yet, for all of that, it wasn't nearly enough. A naked human dropped into full Ice Age cold freezes to death in hours, not days. So if our biology couldn't save us, our behavior had to. That's where fire and fur come in. So the body handed you the fight. Behavior had to win it, and the survival kit came in 2 parts: controlled fire and the skins of dead animals. Fire feels like the obvious answer. A flame in the dark, warmth on your face, safety from the cold. But here's a wrinkle that surprises even the researchers. For all we assumed that fire burned constantly through the Ice Age, the direct archaeological evidence for hearths during the very coldest peak in Europe is oddly thin on the ground. Recent pyrotechnology research, including work out of the University of Vienna, has explored just how sophisticated Ice Age people were at building and controlling fire. And yet the traces from that frozen maximum are stranger and sparser than you'd expect. Fire mattered, but it couldn't follow you across open tundra, so people turned to fur. The first clothing was almost certainly draped animal hide, skins wrapped, thrown over shoulders, cinched however they could manage. And it worked. Barely. A hide holds warmth, but it's stiff. It's clumsy. It shifts and slides as you move, and everywhere it doesn't quite meet your skin, the cold pours in. Picture the difference. Tonight, you zip a fitted jacket to your chin, pull a drawstring, and the warmth stays sealed against you. 20,000 years ago, you clutched a rigid skin closed with one hand while wind cut through the gap at your neck, your wrists, your waist. Every opening was a leak. Every leak was a slow theft of the heat keeping you alive. A hide could cover you. It couldn't seal you. And in that gap, people were still dying. Now here's the part most people never hear. The thing that finally closed that gap was one of the most underrated inventions in all of human history. The thing that closed the gap was so small, you'd lose it in the carpet. A needle. Not just any pointed sliver of bone. Those existed to poke holes. The real breakthrough was the eyed needle, the one with a tiny hole punched through the end. That single detail changed everything, because an eye means thread. Thread means a stitch. And a stitch means you can stop draping a skin over your body and start building a garment around it. Cut to fit, layered, seamed shut against the wind. And the evidence for this is beautifully concrete. The oldest known needle in the world was found deep in Denisova Cave in the mountains of Siberia. It's made from bird bone, roughly 7 centimeters long, with a deliberately drilled eye, and it dates back around 50,000 years. When it was announced in 2016, there was a twist that still unsettles people. It wasn't made by our species at all. It's associated with the Denisovans, a cousin of humanity most of us have never heard of. From there, Ian Gilligan's research, published in 2024, traces eyed needles spreading across northern Eurasia from about 40,000 years ago onward, appearing exactly where the cold was most brutal. Not a coincidence, a survival tool following the frost. Think about what that little eye unlocked. Seams that lock out the wind. Multiple layers that trap warm air against the skin. Sleeves, hoods, a fit that moves with your body instead of fighting it. A single needle did more for human survival than any spear. And here's the part that folds back onto you. The jacket hanging by your door, its seams, its layers, its tailored cut, is the direct descendant of that bird bone needle in a Siberian cave. But warmth was only the beginning, because once humans could seal themselves against the cold, they did something no equator-born animal had any right to do. Once humans could seal themselves inside engineered warmth, the map cracked wide open. Think about where a naked tropical ape can live, a thin band around the warm middle of the earth, and nowhere else. Now hand that same ape tailored, layered clothing, and suddenly the forbidden places stop being fatal. The Siberian Arctic, the vast frozen mammoth steppe, and eventually the icy corridor across the land bridge into a brand new hemisphere, the Americas. Every one of those doors was locked by biology. Clothing was the key, and we have proof that Ice Age clothing was no bundle of rags. At the Sungheir burial site in Russia, dated to around 34,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered skeletons blanketed in thousands upon thousands of mammoth ivory beads. The beads followed clear lines across the bodies, sewn onto caps, jackets, and trousers that were fitted, structured, and deliberately made. These were engineered garments, tailored winter gear, crafted by people we picture as primitive, buried with the kind of clothing that took countless hours to sew. Then comes confirmation from the strangest source imaginable, a parasite. In 2003, geneticist Ralph Kittler studied the DNA of body lice, a creature that lives only in clothing and cannot survive on bare skin. By tracking when body lice split from head lice, his team estimated when humans started wearing clothes regularly, roughly 70,000 years ago. The bugs living in our clothes accidentally recorded the birth of the wardrobe. So bend all of this back onto yourself for a moment. The reason humans live on every continent, in deserts and tundra, and everywhere between, the reason you exist wherever you happen to be watching this from, traces straight back to sealed, stitched clothing. We didn't adapt to the cold. We wore our way out of it. Intelligence, migration, the clothes on your back. The loop closes here, all three threads tied to one invention. And that changes how you should look at the most ordinary thing in your house. So look again at the coat by your door. You've probably never once thought of it as technology, but that's exactly what it is. One of the oldest, most refined survival tools our species ever built, perfected across 70,000 years until it disappeared into the background of your life. The hoodie draped over the chair, the blanket crumpled at the foot of your bed. These aren't conveniences. They're the descendants of the invention that kept humanity from going extinct. Sit with the contrast for a second. Somewhere on the mammoth steppe 30,000 years ago, a mother sits close to the fire, bone needle in hand, stitching a fur garment for her child. She isn't decorating. She's racing the temperature. Every seam she closes is a few more degrees between her child and the dark. If she gets it wrong, the night takes them. Now, picture yourself stepping outside, realizing you forgot your jacket and feeling nothing more than a flicker of mild annoyance. Same cold, same human body. An entire universe of difference between those two moments. And only one of them ends in someone possibly dying. For almost all of human history, cold wasn't an inconvenience. It was the enemy that decided who lived and who didn't. And clothing was the shield standing between our species and a quiet, frozen extinction. That's why your body still reacts the way it does. The shiver that grips you. The goosebumps trying to raise fur you don't have. The deep automatic urge to bundle up when a storm rolls in. Those are ancient alarms, still firing at full volume, in a world that has made them almost unnecessary. Almost. You are wearing the reason your ancestors didn't die. Slip on a coat tonight, and you're repeating a gesture older than farming, older than cities, older than written language itself, which raises one last quieter question, one worth sitting with. But every conquest costs something. In beating the cold so completely, we quietly lost what our ancestors had, the intimacy with the world around them, the knowledge of how to make warmth with their own two hands, the raw awareness that tomorrow was never promised. They could turn an animal into shelter. Most of us couldn't survive a single night the way they lived, everyone. We traded the skill of surviving for the comfort of never having to. And almost none of us noticed the trade was ever made. They survived the Ice Age so completely that we forgot it ever tried to kill us. That's not just history, that's the warmth around you right now.